Hello, my name is George Kehoe, and I'm here to speak to you today about my becoming your representative on the Strait Regional School Board. As you may know, there's an election on October 15th for our municipal council. And in speaking to some people, I know there's confusion because they don't realize that on that same date, there's also a school board election. So when you enter the voting office, you will be given two ballots. One where you vote for your municipal councillor, and a second ballot where you vote for your school board representative. If you're not given two ballots, you should ask for two because it's your right. Another point I want to make at this time is that, of course, in our area, we are represented by two different school boards, an Acadian board and an English board. And normally, you would make a choice as to which board you want to support. But in this case, the French board members are already elected. They have been acclaimed. Therefore, the only choice you have is, do you want to vote for a school board member or not? Because I want to tell you, you're free to vote for me if you so choose. Now, I want to begin by telling a couple of stories. As many of you know, I was an educator for 30 years, and I know that telling stories is a great way to teach things. So a few years ago, I was asked to volunteer some time and speak to a group of young adults who were taking a retraining program. I believe this was put on by the Literacy Network. So I began my presentation that day by asking the group, what kind of government do we have? And they were a little confused at first, but then one of them suggested we have a liberal government. And I said, no, that's not correct. So then somebody else said we have an NDP government, and I said, no, that's not correct. And I could tell that they were getting more confused, as you might be right now. Finally, one of them said, well, it has to be a conservative government. And I said, no, that's not what I'm looking for. So finally, I realized I'd have to tell them. So I said, we have self-government. We govern ourselves. And we do that through a democratic process whereby we elect members from our own community to represent us in government. Here on Isle Madame and in Richmond County, we are represented at the federal level by Roger Cuzner, whom we elected, and we're represented at the provincial level by Michelle Sampson, who we also elected. And on October 15th, we will be selecting who will represent us on our next municipal council. And of course, you will also be selecting who will represent you on the Strait Regional School Board. It will be, of course, be a privilege to represent you on the school board. But not only that, it is also a large responsibility. The responsibility involves making good decisions. And sometimes, like I often heard my mother say, you have to make a choice between two evils. And you have to be able to pick the lesser of two evils. In challenging financial times, since more than 90% of the financing for the school board comes from the provincial government, because in Canada, education is a provincial responsibility. So many times the provincial government, being short of money, will cut the school board budget. And so then you're faced with a decision. How do you make up for those cuts? Well, there's two areas in general. You either lay off teachers or you close schools. To me, the lesser of those two evils is, of course, to close a school, because the most important person in the educational system is the teacher. It's not the computer, it's not the chalkboard or the whiteboard, it's the person at the front of the room, and that's the teacher. Another point I want to make is that another story I'll start with. There was a superintendent with the Annapolis Valley Board one time, and it was during an election year, And one of his parents said to him, I'd offer for the school board, but I don't know anything about education. And his response was, oh, you don't have to know anything about an education. I've got an office full of educational experts. I need somebody on the school board who can make decisions. And when he first said that, I thought, yeah, that's correct. But then when I had time to reflect on it, I realized, but wait a minute here. If you're on the school board and you don't know anything about education, you can have a superintendent or a staff member that will only give you so much information so that they can manipulate you to make the decision you want. So it clearly helps if you understand the educational system, because at least you will recognize that there's more to this story that I'm getting, and I better start asking a few questions. The other thing, too, is that I remember on one occasion when the director of programs and student services was making a pitch to the board for something, and when he was all finished, I said to him, well, if you were trying to confuse me, it worked, and now you'll have to start over again. And of course, the expression on his face showed that he was annoyed with me. But at the same time, one of the other board members said, thank you, George. I thought I was the only one that didn't understand this. So the other point I want to make to you is that I spent 18 years on school boards between Richmond County and the Strait Region. And I can honestly say I will never vote on a motion if I don't understand it. So you learn to ask questions and you make sure you understand what you're voting for. The other thing that I can do, since I have 16 grandchildren, when somebody is proposing a change in the educational system, my thinking is, do I want this for my grandchildren? And if the answer is no, then I don't want it for your grandchildren either. So that really helps me in making some of these decisions. Another aspect of being a school board representative is in dealing with the Department of Education, because quite frequently school board representatives have to go and meet with the minister and have a face-to-face discussion on some issues. And once again, it clearly helps if you have a good understanding of the issue and how a decision will affect the school system. Some years ago, an auditor from the tax department, the federal tax department, visited the school board and looked at some of the books and the tax returns of employees, and then looked at the fact that school board members were being reimbursed for their expenses and not paying tax on it. And so the ruling this gentleman made was that from now on that would be taxable. And of course, I blurted out immediately, that can't be right, that's a double tax. And so I was asked, what do you mean by a double tax? So I explained. If I have to go to Halifax to meet with the minister, and it costs me $50 worth of gas, the $50 that I take out of my pocket to buy the gas is money that I already paid tax on. Normally, your employer takes the tax off your paycheck before you receive the balance. And so the money you carry around in your pocket is what we refer to as after-tax dollars. So the first level of taxation occurred right there. Now, we go to Halifax, we put in an expense account, and the Department of Education reimburses the $50. And then the federal government says that's taxable. That would be a second tax on the same money. So the board agreed with me, and we agreed that we would have to get legal help. But then we had the discussion as how are we going to pay for the legal help? So once again, my mind said, well, wait a minute, if this applies to all board members in Nova Scotia, it's going to end up costing the Department of Education more money because we're going to want that money back. So we took that argument to the Deputy Minister of Education, and he saw it immediately and said, all right, we'll pay your expenses. So we went to court and we won the case hands down. The auditor was totally wrong on that. And I could take some time and go into explaining how he was wrong, but I don't think that's necessary here. I made my point, I believe, that being a school board member is not a simple matter of attending a meeting. It's very complex, and you have to have your wits about you, and you have to understand the educational system. All right, now I've bored you enough, I believe. But again, I want to repeat that on election day, October 15th, when you go to vote for your municipal councillor, and by the way, you should go to vote. I think that's particularly important. I can assure you there's many citizens in communist China today who would love to have the right to vote. And I believe that we here in this democratic country, we're in danger of losing our democracy because we're not taking it seriously enough. I'm reminded of the joke about two deckhands on the Titanic. One said to the other, "I hear we're sinking." And the other guy says, "I don't care, it doesn't belong to me." Well, we're in the same position now here in Canada with our democratic system. If we don't wake up and pay attention, we might lose it. And we might not like what the alternative will be. So it's important to vote. Exercise your right to vote. It's a right, and do it. Now I get back to my point. October 15th, you should receive 2 ballots. One for the municipal council member and one for the school board member. If you don't receive 2, ask for them. The other point I want to make is that there are 2 advanced polls, one on October the 8th and the other on